welcome to another edition of Spotlight on the Collection. I'm Lori Pickell-Stengel, and I'm here outside of the McLeod County Historical Museum. And since it's very close to Valentine's Day, I figured I would share with you guys a little bit of history about Valentine's Day and also some of the really beautiful Valentine's Day cards that we have at the Historical Society. I don't know how much people really know about Valentine's Day, except for it stresses a lot of people out, especially if they have a loved one that they have to try to find a special gift for. Well, I gave my loved one a whole day. I don't know if he liked it or not, but I sure enjoyed it. So it was kind of a gift to myself, too. And I think us ladies maybe have a tendency to do that once in a while. But Valentine's Day didn't have such a sweet beginning. And it actually, like a lot of holidays, it can be traced all the way back to Roman times and has its origins in not Christianity, but a pagan religion. And I'll read you a little bit on this, which this was very eye-opening to me and surprising. But the festival was, like I said, a pagan festival, and it was a group of Romans called the Lupercia. Now, I might be pronouncing that not quite right, but the Lupercalia, or Lupercia, whichever way you pronounce it, they were a group that believed that in February it was a time of fertility. Animals in the spring would be mating, and they wanted to spread that fertility around. So it was an order of Roman priests. They would gather at a sacred cave where the infants Romulus and Remus, which were the founders of Rome, were believed to have been born and raised by a she-wolf. And the priests would sacrifice a goat for fertility and a dog for purification, and they would then strip the goat's hide into strips, dip them into the sacrificial blood, and take to the streets, gently slapping both women and crop fields with the goat's hide, making them more fertile and giving them fertility for the coming year. Later in the day, according to legend, all the young women in the city would place their names into a giant urn, and the city's bachelors would each choose a name and become paired with that person for the entire year. And the matches, not always, but often would end in marriage. So, not quite the romantic start that I was hoping for. And definitely a far cry from the hearts and flowers and candy that we think of and associate with Valentine's Day today. So how do we get to the Valentine's Day that we know today? Well, like many pagan traditions and holidays, the Christians got a hold of them and they changed them to fit and be more Christian-like. There's a lot of different theories, but one theory is that there was a saint, or several saints, named Valentine. And to help celebrate Saint Valentine, they chose February 14th to replace that pagan holiday and celebrate instead a Christian holiday. But it's still a far cry from the traditions that we have today with romance and Valentine's Day. But according to one Catholic story that recognizes Saint Valentine, or Valentinus, they were martyrs. And when Emperor Claudius II decided that single men made better soldiers than married men, he made a rule and decreed that soldiers, young men who were serving military service, which was mandatory, they could not be married. Well, a priest named Valentine felt that this was sacrilegious because, of course, these men were still having relationships and children, and he went against the emperor, and in secret he would hold marriage ceremonies for these soldiers. So we can start to see a little bit of the romance, these lovers that want to be together and be married. So he, of course, was then locked up and beheaded for doing these crimes against Rome. But there was another saint, Valentine, and this story actually ties in a little bit to like Valentine's cards that I'll be showing you a little bit later. And this Valentine was, again, he was a martyr, a Christian martyr, and it is said that he was in prison because he was helping Christians escape prisons of the Romans where they were brutalized and beaten. And according to one legend, an imprisoned Valentine actually sent the first Valentine by greeting himself as he fell in love with a young girl, possibly the jailer's daughter. And she apparently visited him in his confinement every day. And before his death, it's alleged that he wrote her a letter, possibly a love letter, and he signed it, "From your Valentine." And of course, this tradition continues today. Still not quite the romantic Valentines that I'm looking for here. So how did it evolve even further? Well, by the Middle Ages, there was something called courtly love, and this is really where this courtly love began, where minstrels would play songs about love and sing them to their betrothed, and the unacquitted love where they couldn't be together and their heart would be broken, and that's where this romance would come from. And also too, it's when they would start writing poems, and these poems would be written down or read aloud, and romance would be, of course, the whole object of it. But we still haven't really got to having Valentine's Day cards sent, and although today over 150 million Valentine's Day cards are sent out on an annual basis, back then it was pretty unheard of to have Valentine's Day cards, even homemade ones. And it wasn't until about 1700 that that practice really started. And until the 1840s, when a woman named Esther A. Howland began selling mass-produced Valentine's Day cards in America, that it became a norm and kind of expected. Where's my Valentine's Day card? And then children also would give them out at schools because it was easy, it was convenient, you could just sign your name. But before then, they were all handmade. So it wasn't until the 1840s that this became a real common practice in America. And so, of course, with McLeod County, our collection really starts when the county was formed because, of course, these traditions were brought here. And 1850s would have been the first Valentine's Day cards that would have been exchanged in McLeod County. And of course, they were mass produced. Now, we do still have some homemade ones, of course. People still do that today. But most of them are mass produced pieces that were purchased. But I have to say, compared to the Valentines of today, they're very intricate, they're very detailed, and they also have a three-dimensional quality to them. Now, one example I have brought today is this one. It's very beautiful, and be very careful with it. It pops out, so it can actually set on your desk. Now, this particular one is from a collection, and it was printed in Germany, and it belonged to Eleanor Ingebretsen, and it's from the early 1900s. It has a three-dimensional stand-up Valentine with picture of cherubs, hands touching through floral hearts, and a verse that says Valentine greetings. It's very beautiful, very delicate. And on the back, you could even see there's some cellophane that has hearts that show through. But we also have examples of postcards. And here's an early postcard version. Again, a mass-produced piece. And it's a Valentine postcard with two angels playing an instrument, one picking up hearts, baskets of hearts and trees. It says, "To my Valentine, sent to Master Charles Stocking, February 14th, 1910, from Aunt Hattie." Aw, isn't that sweet? 1 cent stamp too, by the way. Can't do that anymore. And this is another example of a postcard stamp, or a postcard Valentine, with a picture of a girl holding flowers. It says, "I love you." And it's to Mary Pavlish from Annie Joyce, her teacher. And this one also was printed in Germany. And we find that the really early ones, most of them were done and brought in from Germany. Must have the corner market, at least in this area. Now later on, the Valentines, of course, they change with the times. And as different trends and graphics and caricatures change, you get less elaborate. The Victorian, everything in Victorian times was very elaborate, like the example of the first card. And they get funnier too, and more cutesy. Valentine greeting postcard with picture of big-eyed boy and girl holding hearts and touching hands. And this one was actually done in the good old USA. And it's addressed to Ernest from Arthur Moore. Now these two actually have little stands. They stand up. You can set them up. And this is from a collection of quite a few people, and that's how we kind of get them sometimes at the Historical Society. People will donate large collections of them that they've saved over the years. And these two come from a larger collection. And it's Valentines that belong to Laverna Burkholz from the 1940s. And the picture of a girl with a birdhouse and 3 birds and a little bird. "A little birdie told me," is what it says, "that you would be my Valentine." Isn't that cute? And on the back you can see it's handwritten. Hopefully you can see that. If not, you'll just have to come to the museum because they're still on display, along with many, many more. Now, everyone's seen the giant jumbo cards? Well, this is one of the largest ones, older ones that we have at the Historical Society, and we even still have the envelope that it came in. And you can actually, it has a little action to it. You can move it around. Little children bobble their heads. We two could get real chummy if you but had a mind to, Valentine. And this particular one, let's see who donated this one. Fred and Eliza Burkholz and Herman and Paul Burkholz are the donors. And it's an oversized movable Valentine in envelope given to Laverna by Doug Dibbs at District 10 Winsted Township School. And I would say, besides lovers exchanging, the biggest purchasers probably of Valentines nowadays are for children in school. But as I told you the history before, it was a very grown-up holiday for most of history. But I did find one little historical note that referred to children, where in Germany and some of the other European countries that a gnome-like figure would leave little sweets and treats on Valentine's Day. And if you go really far back, in medieval times, that Saint Valentine would bless young children, and basically so that they wouldn't get disease or fall ill. They had a particular disease they called the Valentine Malady, which I'm not sure how Valentine could also cause and cure, but I'm guessing the connection maybe is a little murky there. But it had to do with epilepsy and children developing epilepsy. And of course was a real fear and didn't understand it as much in those days. But for the most part, Valentine's Day, only in recent times, has become a children's holiday that they participate in too. But why not? Because today you get in on the chocolate action, and that's where it is for me. You gotta have the chocolate. But we have this huge collection of Valentines throughout time that McLeod County has been around that people have donated to the Historical Society. It's going to be on display until the end of February, so come down to the museum, check it out while it's still up. It's absolutely beautiful pieces that you can see. Some were handmade. Like I said, most are the mass-produced, a lot of them made in Germany. So I invite you to come and see us at the museum.